This is a detailed leveling guide for a minion infernalist, and with it comes a detailed leveling guide on Mobalytics. There are a bunch of great endgame builds for minions out there, but not that many good leveling guides, so hopefully this one helps. Let's dive in. I created 2 infernalists so far. My first one has reached level 95 and this one is now level 71. I clearly enjoy playing the class. I rerolled basically to the same class, and for this character I kept writing along on Mobalytics to provide a detailed record of the skills I used, the gear I found, and the Alice passive 3 points. There's even a loot filter, which I'll talk about later. Completely optional of course, but you can use it at your own risk. So far I've reached level 71, I've ascended 3 times, my resistances are completely atrocious. I'm clearing tier 1 maps with ease, and apart from the first 2 acts of the campaign, which can be a little rough, I've been cruising. I died only 6 times, which I think is respectable. I don't want to oversell this build. I know it is a very decent build as I cleared the entire endgame already on my other character. It clears well, it does good damage, but especially the start of the campaign is quite rough. And endgame scaling isn't maybe the best either. And there are some other downsides I will list in the pros and cons. Let's talk about the build. I am playing my own version of an Infernalist Minion build so far, using Arsonists as the main damage dealers because their clear speed is great, and even on bosses they're doing very well. Plus, you don't need to use their special ability as you would with skeletal snipers, making this effectively a one-button build. You are spamming Flame Wall and that's it. You can see this build as more of a generic summoner build where you can slot in multiple minions if you want. The skeletal snipers do perform pretty well, especially on single target. You can run mages, either frost or lightning, and even in theory melee minions could work. However, they get stuck all the time. The offensive layers are the minions themselves. The defensive layers consists of energy shield and block. Grim Feast is currently really strong, effectively doubling your energy shield. I think once GGG returns from their holidays it will be nerfed, so I'm not leaning into it all that much, and as soon as they nerf it I will update this guide on Mobalytics. The Infernalist Summoner is a great build, but has of course pros and cons. Starting with the pros. 1. Apart from a somewhat rough start in the campaign, the build scales well with only a few stats, and it is rather easy to gear. You're looking for plus levels for your minions, because every stat that they have scales with levels. You're looking for spirit, as it allows you to summon more minions, multiplying your damage. You're looking for energy shield, as that's most of your effective health, and the rest really is just attributes and resistances. 2. A summoner playstyle allows you to focus on the boss mechanics, loot gear, just enjoy the scenery PoE2 offers, while your minions are doing the work. You can stay away from most bosses, which is definitely a plus in the current state of the game. 3. It is SSF friendly, as I am an SSF player because it's so easy to gear. This makes this build a great starter, and I'm sure it's going to take a spot in the league start scenarios. 4. It's quite a tanky build, proved by the fact that so far I only died 6 times without investing much in defense at all, and without capped resistances and without all of that. 5. It's already quite a meta archetype, with renowned creators like Grip and Grazi providing detailed endgame guides on the topic. My video and guide is primarily aimed at getting you to endgame in the smoothest way possible in a league start scenario. From there you can either stick to my version of the build or check out their guides and make a super easy respec. A little bit later I will make a guide about my actual endgame setup here. Then some cons. 1. The start of the campaign is rough. I suppose that's true for quite a few builds. I was playing a monk yesterday and I mean, whoa, talking about rough. But you are reliant on gear to scale the minions early on. Getting a +2 minion level on gear is a huge upgrade, as well as some spirit. Not getting that, however, means you're doing half the damage. This is likely more of an issue now than in some time, because I'm expecting GGG to balance the item drops a bit, making this less of a problem. 2. The build is quite slow. The minions clear well, but you are moving slowly. There's no movement speed on the tree. I'm not really a fan of using movement skills so far, or blink or any of that. Maybe later I will, but one of the issues with moving around is that if you move too fast, your minions despawn anyway. So you're there looking at the monsters all by yourself. That's kind of not the idea of this build. 3. Speaking of minions, their AI is pretty bad. They're body blocking each other in smaller spaces, they don't necessarily respond well to commands, they despawn because they're too slow to catch up if you're moving, etc. It's fine most of the time, especially in open maps and whatnot, but when you are in a map with a bunch of small rooms, it can feel pretty bad. 4. Visual clarity. All the fire explosions completely obscure the vision, especially if ground effects, making it very hard to see sometimes what the enemies are doing or casting. This can be a real issue. I will be explaining the skills that you're using throughout the acts and their synergies. For the details on when to use which support gem, please see the Mobalytics guide. After Act 1, the build is already fully functional by simply spamming Flame Wall. The Flame Wall creates walls of fire which enhance any projectile passing it by providing flat fire damage. The higher level the Flame Wall, the more flat fire damage is added. Flame Wall also ignites enemies. As the attacks of our skeletal arsonists are projectiles, it gains additional flat fire damage, which is then skilled by increased minion damage from the passive tree and damage multipliers in their support gems. Flame Wall also procs Raging Spirits, which require a fire spell to appear. The Raging Spirits deal decent damage as well, can be exploded by using the Arsonist's special ability for extra damage, and overall provide good support. The summon Infernal Hellhound always ignites enemies around him, which we're leveraging to break enemy fire resistances. This increases the damage from Raging Spirits and Arsonists, which primarily deal fire damage. The Hound also takes 20% of our damage taken. On rares and bosses, you use Bane Offering for a massive damage boost, and you curse enemies with flammability to reduce their fire resistance. The Skeletal Cleric that you get later on makes sure your minions are healed and revived, so there's very little DPS downtime with 1 or 2 of those around. Let me walk you quickly through the highlights of the passive tree. Again, on Mobalytics you will find a breakdown per act, so that's very easy to follow. We are primarily just taking minion nodes, as our character typically has enough health to survive an attack or two. The first part of the progression focuses on minion revive speed to make sure you have at least an army available to you. Then we're focusing a bit more on minion survivability by giving them resistances plus some accuracy. And finally, we take some more minion damage and boost our own energy shield. I've created the loot filter based on the Neversink one, link in the description of the video. Use this at your own risk, as it does some very specific stuff. This loot filter hides a bunch of base items, primarily all those requiring strength and evasion, because you're an energy shield build and you should be using intelligence-based gear to make your life a lot easier. There are several comments placed at the rules so you can see what the rule does, and you can disable the rule if you want. You should definitely at least read through this filter once before enabling it. You have been warned. Again, please use this at your own risk. That's it, that's the leveling guide. I would appreciate some feedback. The Mobalytics guide I will be updating, and it will be updated as soon as there is new information or I make significant changes. All of the changes will be kept track of in the changelog. And yeah, feel free to bookmark the Mobalytics guide, it's going to be very helpful I think. You'll find plenty of details in that written guide. I went out of my way to make it as extensive and informative as I could, so hopefully it works for you. I hope you had a good time watching the video. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions. Subscribe and like for more Path of Exile SSF content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.